The first thing handed to the player is a sledgehammer, and an instruction with no context behind it: exterminate the vermin. The office floor looks ordinary at a glance: desks, filing cabinets, bathroom stalls, break rooms. Except that somewhere among the ordinary furniture, a handful of objects aren't furniture at all. There's no visual tell distinguishing a real chair from a vermin wearing one until the hammer connects, at which point the disguise splits open into something wet and red and unmistakably alive, screaming as it collapses. A screen mounted in the office cuts periodically to a news anchor named Shpitz, reporting from behind a desk under an FFI news banner, who narrates the task back to the player, as though it were breaking news, rather than direct instruction. More vermin, spreading, somewhere on the floors ahead. Nothing about his tone yet suggests he's anything other than a narrative device, a voice keeping the objective clear. That impression doesn't last. Past the first floor, a timer attaches itself to every level, and completing the room means finding every vermin before it expires. Running out simply resets the section, rather than ending the game outright. So the loop tightens, rather than breaks. Later floors compound the pressure, without changing the underlying task. One level flips its own geometry upside down, the reporter describing the shift as the office's geometry having become uncooperative, offering no further explanation for how a building does that. Another splits the screen into two simultaneous versions of the same floor plan, forcing the search to run in both at once. The vermin themselves stay put in mostly the same handful of hiding places level to level, favoring the spots a real search would check anyway: cabinets, refrigerators, and bathroom stalls specifically, where a stall door reading occupied, by the game's own internal logic, the giveaway that something's inside waiting to be found, rather than a courtesy warning to leave it alone. Shpitz doesn't stay a fixed, neutral voice for long. His first visible symptom is a nosebleed, dismissed in the moment as nothing worth pausing over. It doesn't stay minor. Across the following broadcasts, his skin discolors, sores and pulsing lumps spread visibly across his face and hands. His fingernails go black, and his manner curdles alongside his body, sharper, more demanding, openly begging the player at points to move faster, because the lumps are spreading further with every level that runs along. In the background of every cutaway, his ashtray fills further with cigarette butts each time the camera returns to him, while the no smoking signs papering the office walls the player is walking through grow steadily more numerous alongside it, climbing right through to the final level, which is blanketed in them. The level built around the two simultaneous office layouts, the one the game's own community shorthand calls the Chaos level, is where Shpitz stops performing the role of detached narrator and says something that can't be folded back into it afterward. He admits, mid-broadcast, that he was cruel to the player earlier, that the task assigned was never actually completable, that his own hope in setting it was never fair to begin with. He tells the player not to worry about the timer any longer, because it was never really theirs, it was his. He closes the admission with a single, unexplainable line that he is being unborn. Nothing about the office searches immediately explains what that phrase means. The context for it doesn't arrive from inside the building at all. The perspective breaks from the office setting completely and drops into an oncologist exam room, where a doctor is delivering results to a patient identified as Mr. Shpitz, terminal cancer, with only months left, regardless of treatment. Shpitz's response isn't to process the diagnosis. He refuses to lay down and accept it, because there's a massacre happening in an office downtown, one he's determined to turn into the story of his career before he dies. The one thing he believes will make people remember he was actually here. The doctor tells him plainly that he doesn't have time left for that story and should be putting his affairs in order instead. Woven into the same scene is a piece of history the game hadn't offered before this point: Shpitz's fear, stated outright, of turning into his own mother, whom he describes having hated, and having spent his life dreading resembling, layered against the plain fact that he's now dying, by his own account, in something close to the same way she did. Read back against that reveal, the entire structure the player has been walking through reorganizes itself, without changing a single mechanic. And it turns out to be carrying two meanings at once rather than one. The vermin disguised as ordinary furniture are cancer cells, hidden inside otherwise healthy tissue, indistinguishable from what's meant to be there until something forces the disguise open. But they're also standing in for the victims of the actual office massacre Shpitz is racing to finish reporting on before his body gives out. The story he can't let go of, even with a doctor telling him to stop. The sledgehammer swinging at everything in reach, vermin, and innocent furniture both, reads as treatment that can't fully distinguish what it's supposed to destroy from what it isn't. Brutal and indiscriminate, either way you read it. The rising cigarette count and the accumulating warning signs read as the plain cause underneath it all, stated as bluntly as a public health notice rather than hidden inside subtext. And the timer, the one Shpitz insists near the end was never really the players to race against, reads as exactly what he says it is. His own remaining time, externalized into a game mechanic the player had been treating as an ordinary obstacle the entire way through. The game's own closing line doesn't soften any of it into resolution. Shpitz's last recorded words state that no one will care about his death if he doesn't manage to prove, before it happens, that he actually lived. The screen closes on an in memoriam credit for Harold A. Shpitz, the fuller name behind the anchor's on-air persona, offered without further comment attached. The game's final stretch abandons its own established pattern outright. The level built around the two simultaneous office layouts is, by design, not something the timer allows a player to actually finish. The geometry and the shortened clock working against each other on purpose. What follows isn't a return to the elevator. The building itself gives way to something closer to the inside of a body, a passage lined with what look like tumors that have to be broken through rather than office furniture, leading eventually to the elevator that carries the player into the doctor's office scene, regardless of whether every vermin along the way was ever found. A confirmed alternate path exists through this same stretch, a secret door, positioned across from where the elevator room door sits back in level 1. That leads to a hidden room instead of the flesh passage. Reaching it is tied to its own achievement, named for the same being unborn. Line Shpitz delivers in the chaos level. If this one resonated, subscribe. New essays drop weekly, and you never know what's coming next. Share it with someone who'd get it, and leave a comment. I want to know which door this opened for you. Mystery Compendium. The archive is always open.